Skateboarders, all right, cities don't love them since they're always riding on public property. But skateboarding is not a crime. But should the city of Watts really build a skate park in the shadow of a historic Southern California landmark?
When I get on a plane, I got to tell you, if I see people who are in Muslim garb, and I think, they're identifying themselves first and foremost as Muslims, I get worried. I get nervous.
Politically incorrect? Well, Juan Williams was fired by National Public Radio for that comment. Today, there's backlash against NPR. So who's apologizing now? Well, it sure ain't filter reporter Kaye Berglund.
And in this economy, the way the business has picked up for this holiday, well, it's nothing short of incredible. At the Halloween, what is it?
What in the world is he doing wearing that costume? And why can't you remember your own name? All the stories people are talking about and everything you need to know right now on The Filter. Hello again off the top of The Filter forefront. It's our top 4 of the day, including what do you do about a bully? But let's begin with this. And down the stretch they come, according to the latest LA Times poll. Jerry Brown has opened a 13-point lead over Meg Whitman. If that's the case, Meg's going to have to put on a furious rally in the final week, which means more ads. The majority of the ads everybody has run have been negative and sometimes downright nasty. It's not a question of good taste, because obviously good taste doesn't exist. And to be fair, it's this way across the country. Take a look at an ad in the Texas governor's race.
I'm Jocelyn Johnson. 4 years ago, my husband Rodney, a Houston police officer, was murdered in the line of duty by an undocumented alien who had been convicted and arrested several times before. And in fact, he had been deported. In the past, Bill White supported sanctuary city policies that made it difficult for officers to safely do their jobs. I trust Governor Perry to secure our safety. Bill White had his opportunity as mayor of Houston, and he failed. Join me in supporting Rick Perry.
The widow of a slain Houston police officer talking about the death of her husband in the line of duty. Our contributors tonight, actress and social activist Debra Wilson, and the editor of RonKLA.com, Ron Kaye. Our pictures are furnished by Skype. Ron, we'll start with you. A woman's pain used for political gain. Is that okay?
I'm shocked, Fred, just absolutely shocked. I don't even think it's the worst ad that I've seen. I mean, nobody talks about issues that governors, senators, anybody can do anything about. They merely talk in a symbolic language, playing to our emotions, our prejudices. The political system's just run absolutely wild. I mean, this is a widow of a slain police officer. She's willingly getting involved in doing it. I watched the news broadcast that analyzed and talked about it. It was fairly rational discussion, actually, and both sides had a fair shot at talking about it. I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as the stuff I'm seeing here in California.
Well, certainly, Deb, you would have to agree. The Meg Whitman, Jerry Brown stuff has just been horrific. What do you think?
Wham, wham, wham. Somebody call the whambulance. I'm honestly disgusted with the campaigns that both of them are running. I've been listening to the ads. I've been inundated on my phone. I've been inundated on my computer. I've been inundated in the car listening to the commercials. And it's a tragic. It's so tragic. And although our country and a lot of countries have that whole political history of muckraking and slinging mud, everybody knows that, all is fair in love and politics, and it's gone too far. And I agree with Ron completely that it's taken a turn for the worse, and we are no worse for wear, because we live in the type of society in the 20th and 21st centuries where we are basically manipulated with our feelings, how we feel about things, the lack of things. Advertising does it all the time. You're not good enough unless you have this thing, unless you take this medicine, unless this. These are the cures, and these are the problems you are having. And I think we need to stop being dictated to and really work on being intellectual about choosing people for office that represent us and not their personal and emotional desires.
It's interesting, because I think when you check all the ads from the campaigns, it's not who do you want to win. You want the lesser of two evils to win, if that's even possible. All right. Now, when you think of the city of Watts, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Gangs. Hacienda Village Boys, Crips, 99th Street Mafia. It's a tough place. I think it's fair to say it can be scary. Citizens of Watts don't like the stigma. They would like things to change. One idea is to build a new skate park. It would cost $350,000. Money would be funded from donations. The location would be in the shadow of the Watch Towers. Now, that has some residents upset. They cherish the watchtowers as a work of art, a landmark that is one of the few attractions that can pull tourists into Watts. They don't want the skateboard park next to it. What's more important, the watchtowers or a skateboard park that might, and I underscore the word might, help the community come together, Deborah?
Well, I'm glad you asked the black person first, Fred. Thank you. I'm just teasing.
You know what? No,
just teasing.
We're just going in
I'm
order.
not going to shoot you, man. I'm not going to shoot you. Just teasing. But not really.
All right, but as a black person, what do you think?
The bottom line is this. The Watts Towers have been there for a long time, and it's not necessarily an icon outside of Los Angeles. Unfortunately, I don't think it pulls tourists to begin with. This is a slippery slope, and I think it's less about finding an answer and actually looking at all the issues involved here. First of all, the Watts Towers doesn't really pull tourists in to watch. The last time I've seen, the Watts Towers advertised anywhere or glorified was in a 1991 movie with Denzel Washington called Ricochet. And everybody knows when it comes to Los Angeles, the icons of Los Angeles are Beverly Hills and even Angeline, who comes in second in age to Betty White. But the bottom line is this. Building a skate park is a very slippery slope simply because it would serve the community but not necessarily pull people outside of the community. Everybody knows that there are these unseen lines when it comes to gang violence. So will it serve that community? Possibly so. Will it bring in revenue? Possibly so, but certainly not enough revenue where people are going to have a different opinion about Watts other than the people that live there.
Ron, 40 seconds. What do you think?
Well, I think it's typical of everything the city does. City Hall is deciding what these people should have. It's not respecting the community. It's up to the people who live in the area who take pride in the Watts Tower, whether Debra does or not. And it's up to them, and they don't want the skate park there. They should be left alone. There certainly are other places in the Watts area where a skate park could be built. It seems to me this is a complete fabrication of whatever forces, the Watts gang task force, the cops, whoever, are imposing their will on a community that's got other desires for that space.
Well, we'll keep an eye on that. We'll move on now. Did you know there are roughly 17,000 non-American citizens fighting for the U.S. military? Roughly 17,000. They're here legally, but they're not citizens. Nonetheless, they do put their lives on the line. If a non-citizen dies while serving, they're given citizenship and a military funeral. If a non-citizen returns from combat alive, they are not granted citizenship. And if they commit a crime, they could be deported. According to a 1996 immigration law, a non-citizen can be deported for committing certain crimes. That certainly makes sense. Here's where it gets sticky. Should someone who has defended this country, at the very least, be considered a U.S. national and protected from deportation? They would still have to abide by the ruling of a criminal court, but not be deported. They served in American uniforms, fighting in wars for the United States. Should those who are willing to sacrifice their lives for this country be given special consideration, Ron?
Well, these are legal immigrants that we're talking about, are serving in the military. They've had every chance to join and become a citizen, and every right to do so. I think the military's been remiss in not making it part of it. When I was drafted, they made everybody get at least a GED who didn't have a high school diploma, and encouraging these soldiers and men and women to become citizens ought to be part and parcel of the service. But then they come out and commit crimes of fairly serious natures to be facing deportation. And they can plead for mercy from a judge, but, they do have to take responsibility for their actions. And,
but Ron,
if they're behaving illegally, then there has to be consequences.
No, there's no question about that. And I agree with that. But here's what I don't get. If you are a non-citizen fighting for this country, killed in action, you are made a citizen and given a military funeral. If you are a non-citizen fighting for this country in return, you get nothing. Does that make sense?
Well, it doesn't make sense, but it's up to you to at least sign the paper. It's pretty outrageous, I agree, that if you're dead, you're an American. But they really ought to do something to fix the whole thing. And some of the cases I've read about, pretty tough cases to justify the people's behavior, the veterans' behavior.
All right, Deb, you have 35 seconds. What do you think?
Hi, I'm not a bleeding heart liberal, but I do play one on Skype. I'm going to have to take bleeding heart liberal on this one, Ron. the government will allow you to go and serve in the military in the United States. You have the credentials to serve in the United States. You have the authority to serve in the United States or outside of the United States. You're under the United States authority to serve in the military. You get a uniform. You get credentials. Yet, when you are done serving your country and acting like you served your country because you take action to serve this country, you are no longer allowed to be a part of this country. I think that's absolutely ridiculous, knowing that the government says, now that you are in the military, you are considered U.S. property. You are considered U.S. property, and now we're going to take that right from you until you die. I think that's ridiculous. I think absolutely they should have that opportunity to be made citizens if they have first served their country. Absolutely.
Ron,
what if they're dishonorably discharged, Deborah?
If you're dishonorably discharged, that may be a whole different story. That may be a whole different story. But if you serve this country and you've been a citizen, in your actions, the government, I feel, does not have the right, except, obviously, for the law, to take away that action and saying, we're no longer going to have that action for you in a benefit for you. But yet you can benefit our country and this country, but we're not going to benefit you or your family after serving the time and action to do so.
I know we have to move on, Ron. Let me just say this, and then I'll give you the final word. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. Here's the deal. If you come back and you commit a crime, if you do, you should be prosecuted to the letter of the law. Do we both agree with that?
Yes.
Sure. Is that fair to say? Okay. But if you have served this country and commit a crime, it's me. I could be wrong. I don't think you should be deported. I think you should go to jail. I think you should pay the price. But you shouldn't be deported after you've fought and sacrificed and faced the possibility of losing your life for this country. You want the last word, Ron? I'll give you 10 seconds. Go.
Well, I think you got to judge it case by case and the real behavior of the people. They've had every chance to become citizens. No one kept them from becoming a citizen. It was their choice, and they left themselves vulnerable. I think a judge would give them great credence to their service and try to avoid deportation if it was all possible.
Okay, let's move on. Last topic. Bullies in school, nothing new. Remember the situation in Calabasas? A student in a middle school was beaten because he had red hair. Well, technology has now led to cyberbullying, and that has led to widely publicized suicide moments, especially the one of a Rutgers University student who was humiliated online. The state of New Jersey is considering legislation that would require anti-bullying programs in public schools K through 12 and language in college codes of conduct to address bullying. This would be the toughest stance against bullying in the country. Now, for my money, you can teach all the classes and set up all the programs you want. But isn't the real issue, what do you do about a bully? How do you discipline that individual? What penalty should they face, Debra?
They should be dismissed from school. Absolutely. They should be dismissed from school, and it should be put on their school record and on public record as well. Obviously, it's a whole slippery slope when it comes to the police. It's a whole slippery slope when it comes to the community and how to discipline that child. But at the same time, why are we facilitating how to support and nurture those who have been bullied without really punishing and making sure that this doesn't happen? And I don't think it's just bullying. I think it has to do also with hazing in colleges. I think that's ridiculous. I think it's shameful. I think it should be outdated and outlawed. I think bullies should be removed from schools, quite frankly. And if they have to go to another school, it should be on their school record. So we're not going to penalize you, but along with what you've done, your record needs to stand public so people know that you are a bully and it will not be tolerated in any community.
And Ron, I wonder if that was the case, a 14-year-old kid or a 12-year-old kid is accused of bullying, and you put that on their record. What does that mean to the kid?
Well, we're lumping a lot of behaviors into bullying. I mean, the kid who took the pictures, was he bullying or was he being really stupid, insensitive, and cruel? I mean, it's not exactly the same thing that I grew up with. There were always bullies, and you dealt with them either collectively or individually, and they tended to be pretty isolated from the crowd. Real bullying, I mean, hazing isn't bullying. It's maybe antisocial and unpleasant behavior. I'm all for educating people about proper civilized behavior, but there's a whole lot of uncivilized behavior in all kinds of ways, greedy ways, selfish ways, cruel ways. I mean, I don't know how we outlaw and require people to behave in a commonly civilized way. I mean, if somebody commits a crime, it's clear in one thing, but they're not talking about a crime. They're talking about raising kids' consciousness. That's swell. we should raise kids' consciousness, but kids are kids, and they're going to do what comes
but in
naturally
the process of
until they
raising kids'
grow up.
consciousness, they still have a different choice. This is not the same. You're talking about kids nowadays who might have choices in their behavior, but unless there are consequences in a society, they don't always go with the choices that are less popular.
All right, and with that, we'll leave it there because we are way over tonight. Great conversation. Ron, Debra, thank you very much. I'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you,
Yes,
Fred.
sir.